the whole way from 25 or whatever street that is up to the estate is planned. You know, it has these rock bridges and sort of outcroppings and trees, but it feels like it's natural. It feels like this road has just been cut through the forest, and you would never know that a landscape architect came along and said, I think there needs to be a tree there. So this is sort of the same idea.
Actually, I've just finished reading a really awesome book about Biltmore, and he actually hired foresters.
Oh my gosh.
To come in and like decide what trees needed to come down and what needed to be planted and everything. It was
cool.
It was pretty insane.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I would like to read that, actually.
The Last Castle by Denise.
Oh, I've heard of this.
Kiernan? Don't like totally quote me on that last name.
Okay.
But
The Last Castle is what it's called, though.
Yeah.
I feel like I've
It was
heard
very, very good.
Okay, so the picturesque. So it's based on a British landscape idea, and it was common at the turn of the 20th century in large estates like Biltmore. So, and this is exactly when Glensheen, Biltmore was late 1800s, Glensheen is 1908. So it became common to place formal gardens and terraces around the house before a visitor would encounter the parkland beyond. The formal garden, this Beaux-Arts aspect of the landscape architecture, is the focus of Glensheen's exterior, the rear of the property, the east. And it's one of 4 hardscaped elements behind the house that led you to the natural landscape. First was the actual house terrace, then the upper terrace, then the lower terrace, and then the pool. And when it was first installed, the pool featured these 4 arcing jets of water that I think were fed by gravity, and then it was like the pressure from the water from the creek that made these jets sort of spout into these arcs. There's a picture. It's pretty interesting.
Sounds like Las Vegas.
It looks lovely, but they actually replaced that. So they didn't do the jets anymore. They replaced those in 1913. So 5 years after the house was complete.
Maybe this is a little too ostentatious.
Maybe we could do something better. Oh no, they put in something more ostentatious than just having jets. They're like, jets, not enough. Not enough.
Not enough.
Jets are not enough. So in 1913, they replaced it with an elegant marble fountain that was designed by a local stone carver named George Thrana. And one of the stories that's on the documentary I watched is how Thrana came up with an initial design before what's there now. That was a woman riding an alligator or crocodile, and the Cognans were not confident that they really wanted this in their pool, so they have this much more
sedate,
right, universal design than a
not a crocodile.
Right. I don't really know what that would have sort of meant anyway.
A woman riding like Lady Godiva on a crocodile.
Right, exactly. And she may or may not have been naked. So I don't know. I would love to see the design. I'm sure that's a drawing that must exist somewhere. I'm confident. Okay. So anyway, besides these, these elegant surroundings that you would ambulate through were also amusements, including a tennis court and a lawn bowling court and a terraced flower garden and greenhouses that kind of step down the hill. This is all sort of a little bit further from the house itself. So the formal gardens and the terraces were immediately behind, and this is just to the north of the house. The gardener's cottage was built at the low end of this hill, where the greenhouses sort of stepped on the hill. So where the greenhouses ended, there's this lovely gardener's cottage, and this is still
really a cottage like.
It's little, yeah.
Like it's thatched roof?
Sweet. No, it's not thatched roof. You can't. I mean, that kind of material wouldn't really stand up in that climate. But it does look. It is very English. It has a rough, kind of stucco finish. It's not brick like the house. So the outbuildings are clearly more like English, kind of cottagey looking. They also constructed a palm house which gave the family a mini tropical gateway when it was still freezing in Duluth in April.
All the time?
Or May.
Okay.
Depending on the year. So,
bring it on. I love cold weather. I want my coat and my hat and my mittens. F this hot stuff in Charleston.
I'm the opposite of that.
I know
but
you are.
I get it.
I get it.
Heat. I do. I like this. I could live in the Palm House and just eat the bananas and,
I take the bananas.
Right. Okay. So, but the Palm House does not exist any longer. Sadly, it was demolished in the 1970s when its coal heating plant failed. So I thought that was odd that they tore it down just because what kept it hot wasn't working. I mean, I feel like they should have kept the building. So there must be more of a story there.
Yeah.
But anyway, bad things happened in the 70s.
Yeah.
Except for me being born. But everything else.
Just barely.
Anyway, Palm House comes down in the 70s. Don't know exactly what year. But not that, budget's always an issue, but it would be really cool if someday it was reconstructed or I don't know.
I would like to pop up and say that
nice to see it again.
The Glensheen Instagram liked our post.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was super excited.
Oh, that's really nice.
So, shout out to the lovely folks at Glensheen.
Yeah, Glensheen's super awesome. And so the director, I don't even know if they'll listen to this at all, but so the director's name is Dan Hartman. And so I went with my family in 2012, and when we went the first time, he was actually the guide.
Oh,
that
wow.
took us through, and now he's the director and has obviously done really great things because now they're very social and they have stories on Instagram and they do the Facebook and
what you have to do in this day and age.
You do, and I think as a house museum you sort of have to maintain relevancy and all these sort of stuffier ones that you can't take pictures and you can't it's about a lot about no's. Like preservation tends to be a lot about no, you can't do this, and it's important that somebody stands up and said, yeah, we love what we have, so why can't you share? Why can't you really invite others to enjoy this site that we love and believe in?
Yeah. So
anyway, shout out to Glensheen, shout out to Dan, shout out to people making preservation accessible. Yeah, exactly.
Which is what we're trying to do. We're making history accessible.
21st century preservation.
Right.
All right. But I think that was a really important aside, but I do have a few more things to say about the landscape before we get into the
segue
scandal.
Yes.
So I was talking about the outbuildings and the Palm House in the 70s and when I was born. And
but you didn't hear that.
Shh. Well, no, it's allowed.
Okay.
So
you're amazing. So
oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Other buildings on the Glensheen estate included a carriage house. So this is kind of interesting. This is in the early 1900s, right? So 1908. And cars were not, they were only kind of a thing. So the carriage house had space for both horse and horseless carriages,
I like it.
Which I thought was very cute. So there's garage doors and carriage doors. Okay, so those are the outbuildings. So the Cognans told Charles Levitt to maintain as much of the natural beauty that existed as possible. And he added very carefully located trees to improve the body of the forest. So essentially,
it's forestry.
He gave it a weave.
I like it.
So the planting plan, Levitt's planting plan, and the existing trees were not the only thing that helped the estate achieve this natural look. All of the utilities to each structure were buried so that no power lines or conduits would negatively impact the site views.
Wow. So
water, gas, and power are run through a tunnel from London Road, which is the street that Glensheen is on. So that was really forward thinking, to really pay attention to your view sheds and like, hey, we don't want to see a power line, because of course today commonly you will see utilities being buried. So they just had all these things, these like smart things going on the site that in 1908 was just not. I mean, I guess if you had the money, you would do it, but just really very thoughtful design aspects, not just, obviously the house's interior, every little thing was thought about, the exterior, and then, continued out into the grounds and the surroundings.
It's truly self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm. Really, really is, or was. If you visit, after you meander through these beautiful terraces and out beyond the garden, you'll encounter a beautiful stone boathouse and a concrete pier at the edge of Lake Superior. The boathouse is it's constructed of the same stone as the arched bridges on the property, including the most famous one, I guess, over Tisher Creek. The boathouse and the pier, which are right on Lake Superior, are in the direct path of any violent storms that the lake often experiences, from September until May. Sorry, Duluth, but it's kind of true. So it's subjected to the very harsh freeze-thaw cycles. Right. It's in need of rehabilitation. You cannot go in the boathouse, and you can tell that it needs a little bit of love, but it's still really beautiful.
Send your money to Glensheen.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
And us. We have a Patreon.
So the boathouse is a very important element of the estate, and actually a pretty significant to the landscape of Superior itself. So Congdon's Pier is the largest private pier on the lake, and it has the distinction of being the only private pier to show up on navigational maps.
Woo!
Yeah,
so he was special.
Mm-hmm. So beyond these gardens and the paths and the rocky beach, on the immediate property was even more landscape to explore. We can't let Charles Levitt take all the credit for designing the landscape of Glensheen and its surroundings, though. There were two men, Anthony Morell and Arthur Nichols, and they were instrumental in bringing the vision to life. These men worked with Levitt and the well-known and loved trails and park system beyond the estate wouldn't exist without them. So these trails that both the family and visitors enjoyed, they continued beyond a stone bridge constructed over Tisher Creek. And the Congdons actually had a family postcard of the Glensheen estate. And the postcard didn't just feature the house, but it focuses on the bridge. And you can see the side of the house kind of in the background. And I definitely know this view well, because people, including myself, they line up to take the photo. You stand on the bridge, or you stand beneath the bridge on this little kind of rock beach before you hit the lake. There's a little inlet, and there's this beautiful stone bridge, and then the side of Glensheen is sort of up on the hill in the background. It's really lovely. So the trail system that originates at Glensheen stretched for 2 miles uphill away from the lake and is today known as Congdon Park, and it encompasses 38 acres of public land. So Chester, through his company, donated all of the land to Duluth in 1905, so that's before Glensheen was even completed. The city acquired even more land, and the park was named and established in 1908. Congdon's pride in the trail system was reflected in the main access location, which was right inside the gates to Glensheen. He wanted to impress the park's guests, whether they were locals or businessmen. The park was not limited to dirt paths. The trail features rock and wood bridges and stone staircases. So even within this park, there are these planned landscape elements. The stone bridge on the Glensheen property, the one I mentioned over Tisher Creek, was so picturesque that its design actually served as precedent for the bridges on Duluth's famous Seven Bridges Road and Leicester River Bridge.
Ah.
So today, when you visit the grounds, they are much like how they appeared 100 years ago. They did, however, go through an interesting transition after Chester died.